Today, I'm excited to be joined by our founder, Mike Anderson, as we talk about his personal sporting journey, his experience as an athlete parent, and the powerful vision that led to the creation of ACG Mental Performance. Let's dive in. Mike, how are we doing today?
Good. How are you, DJ? Thanks for having me.
Good, man. Of course. Yeah, of course. Finally enjoying some spring, almost summer-ish weather here in Minnesota. Is it the same where you are?
It's beautiful. Yep.
I'll take this every single day of the week. I sensed sun on Sunday and got sunburned already. So
yeah. Well, and then soon enough here it'll be 90 degrees. And
yeah. There's no middle ground, unfortunately. So Mike, this is going to be a great conversation. I want to talk about kind of your background as an athlete, how that's translated into your life in business, your life in parenting. I think a lot of people will find some connections to latch onto. Why don't we just start kind of with your background? Tell us about you. Tell us about your own journey in sports. How has what you've been through kind of gotten you to where you are today?
Yeah. Okay. I guess jumping in. So, when I was a kid, I played everything. Loved sports, and still to this day love sports. So it was all sports when I was a kid. Baseball, basketball, football, golf, hockey, everything but soccer pretty much. We didn't necessarily have soccer when I was growing up. So naturally I have a soccer player son now. So, but loved everything and kind of ended up funneling towards golf and hockey. Those two really kind of tended to be my area of focus, and grew up on a golf course for the most part, a little 9-hole public course in a small town in Iowa. And man, I was out there all day, every day during the summertime. So loved it. Me and the buddies would get out there and, we'd play as many holes as we could or practice and get out there and play the sport that we loved. So continuing on in that area too. So I played, ended up being fairly decent at golf and ended up playing in some national tournaments, the U.S. Junior Amateur. I think it was in Fargo, North Dakota, and then a couple of AJGA tournaments, which is kind of like the professional junior tour, if you will. So I was a pretty good stick when I was younger. I won our club championship, I think when I was 14 or 15 years old. And so against all the older guys and stuff. And so that wasn't maybe super popular at the time, but one of those things where, from a mental perspective, you're fearless, right? And so I just was out playing golf and having a good time. And I think they changed the rules around what ages you had to be to compete after that year.
They call it the Mike Anderson rule.
It's still up in the clubhouse though, like the plaque is also going on and stuff.
Can't take it away.
And then at high school golf, I ended up getting, I got fourth individually as a freshman, and our team won that year the state tournament. So which was really fun and a good group of guys. Played tons of golf together all the time and had a great run the first year, and we're lucky enough to win state. So it was great. And then from then on, I ended up going to Iowa State, which I'll talk about it in a little bit. And then hockey was kind of the yin and the yang for me in terms of sports I played, and loved hockey, loved the team aspect of it, just loved ripping on the ice and just the excitement and the adrenaline that was part of being a hockey player. And I was fortunate enough to play, through sports, was a captain at certain, most of the time through my teams, and played varsity as an 8th grader, which was interesting, being, the size versus some of the other guys that were out there. So that was interesting. Was on all-star teams, played a tournament called the Chicago Showcase, which I don't know if it's the same thing today. It's probably not, but a collection of people all over the country from different states and regions get together, play in tournaments for scouts and things like that. So got drafted by a junior team for what would have been probably, I think, my junior and senior year. I could have went and played juniors. It was in Nebraska, one of the teams. And back then it was harder to kind of even know what was transpiring because, we didn't have social media and email wasn't even really around. And so, I'm kind of dating myself, but that's kind of what it was like. So, but I wasn't super interested because I was playing golf as well and wanted to figure out, playing both potentially in college or, focusing on one in college and not really going the junior route. So fast forward, it ended up working out where I could play both at Iowa State. Both my parents went to Iowa State, and the golf coach and the hockey coach said that I could play both sports there. Golf is a Division I sport, so I redshirted there the first year, and then hockey coach said I could play that as well. And so I kind of balanced them the first year and, was able to play both. And it was really interesting interesting time. So, but again, loved both. And I think nowadays people talk about, whether you play two sports or focus on one sport or play multiple sports. And, it's harder nowadays with the schedules of kids and training. But, and I know you've talked about it in some of the different, segments that you posted, but it can be a real benefit when you're young. And I really appreciated the break on both sides and, kind of a different focus, everything from a team to an individual sport, and, the speed and energy of hockey versus the focus and concentration probably of golf. And so it was a great, pairing at the time. So,
Yeah, I don't think that I know too many dual sport athletes who those are kind of the two sides of the coin, because like you said, they are pretty different. Just in terms of, even, yeah, honestly, the mental skills required, but even mechanically. Um, I feel like a lot of what drives people into sport, or the sport that they end up kind of sticking with, is partially driven by personality, and you need really two very different sides of yourself to play to play hockey versus golf. If you played one like the other, you'd be no good at either of them. So,
yeah.
yeah, so that is pretty interesting. I think that's a lot of experience summed up in a pretty short summary. But you think back on all of that, from the youth to the college level, choosing your path, what were some of your biggest takeaways, turning points in your athletic journey?
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the biggest things, as I do look back, I think not going to play juniors for hockey. Nowadays, I have friends that have kids that play hockey, and a common path is going to play juniors before you go play Division I hockey somewhere, or, potentially semi-pro, try to get into the NHL, that kind of stuff. And so that was a conscious choice of mine, but at the same time too, it didn't seem like it was a big one because I was still playing golf, and I didn't want to give up like a high school year of all the stuff that goes into that, especially senior year. And then I said I played both sports in at Iowa State, and after the first year, the coaches came back and said that it would probably be good if I chose which sport to play, because I was
Mm.
kind of constantly either starting one late or starting the next one late kind of thing, and so it probably made more sense for me to choose. So I think those were, and I chose hockey to do that, and I'll probably talk a little bit about golf in a minute here as it related to that decision. But I just wasn't in love with it at the time, and hockey, just from an energy perspective, and it was the choice at the time. So so I think
Yeah.
those two things probably were some of the biggest, as I look back, the biggest points of my kind of sports journey. So.
It's interesting. I think similar kind of seminal moments for me as an athlete, and so much of it shapes how, I have a 7-year-old son. So I think about how, I was never forced into one sport path, which I'm really grateful for. I do think, my parents, obviously the sport landscape is very different now, but I think my parents understanding better the recruiting process, or how to kind of promote the talent that I had. We really just kind of cruised along, and I had a pretty informal youth sport career. So you capture all that experience, and you capture those lessons. And now, the way that we actually met was, you have a son playing ECNL soccer. So not everyone listening is a soccer person, but the ECNL is easily one of the best two leagues for male youth athletes in the country, at least as it pertains to soccer. So very competitive, huge commitment, 4 nights of training a week, a league that includes a pretty wide geographical area in the Midwest, and of course a nationwide league. Talk about your perspective a little bit. You're experiencing sports through the eyes of a parent. What are you learning? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is knowing how to help your athlete, right? It's really tough to know. Like you see him out there, you want him to do well, you want him to perform well, you want to support him. And I think, the biggest, to me at least, the biggest issue is trying to figure out whether, how hard you need to push, or whether it's just, time to provide some opportunity and let them kind of gravitate towards what they're going to. And, I think having a sports background, can be good. And I've heard, coaches say the parents that were athletes are the ones that are least vocal on the sidelines.
Yeah.
And I maybe subscribe to that, but it's hard from a parent's perspective, and being an athlete. the thing that's probably then biggest for me is I probably can't push my son too much because he knows I didn't play soccer. Out of all those sports I mentioned, it's one that I didn't play. And so from a technical perspective, I feel like I'm smart enough to know that I don't know enough to be, probably know enough to be
Sure.
dangerous and probably a little bit stupid. So, I've learned that lesson maybe along the way a little bit, but I think it's just hard because, you want them to play, you want them to perform well. And I think whether it's playing time or making a certain team or, performing to their ability or, making mistakes or being successful, I think it's just hard, trying to figure out what the right balance is of push and support, to help them, get where they want to get to and just being a good parent. Right. So.
Yeah, to help them, and even to help their environment. My son had his first soccer practice at a kind of small place near where we live, and that's
I'm sure from your perspective, it's like impossible.
it's tough, man. It's tough because I couldn't make his first practice because I was at the academy, and come home, I'm excited to hear like, hey man, how was your first day? How was your first practice? And he's like, yeah, we worked on our punting. I was like, we did what on on the first night? And Kristen's eyeballing me, and I'm like, I'm drafting the email that I'm never going to send in my head about how like you've got 8 7-year-olds and you
Right.
were punting on the first night. But yeah, so it's tough, man. And I'll never say anything, but it's tough not to step in, and it's tough to kind of know. And his journey's only just starting, so I'm excited to see if it's something he sticks with. What sport does he end up gravitating toward? I'm sure the journey's been really fun for you. What stands out, man? What challenges, really great moments stand out as far as your takeaways of kind of seeing your kid go through some of the processes that you went through?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing he played in, as you're obviously well aware, and we're there leading them, but nationals last year
Mm.
and in the ECNL nationals, and which were in San Diego, and getting to play against some of the biggest clubs in the country and being the
And
first.
the biggest kids in the country.
Yes, man, yeah, for sure. And it was and it reminds me of back, some of when I was playing, like I said, Chicago Showcase and some of those other type of national events, and just thinking about the level of confidence that you need to have in yourself and, in your teammates, and practicing and knowing that you deserve to be there. And, I was proud of him for the way that he played. I was proud, of you guys in the team and showing up, and yep, you guys deserve to be there, and we deserve to be there. And it was good. It was really fun. It was good for the boys. It was good for the club in general. Like I was going to say, obviously, that it was the first team from the club that's gone to national playoffs. And so it was quite a moment for everybody. So, and they played really well, and, it's part of his story so far, and hopefully it'll continue to go that way. But yeah, I'd say that was probably the highlight. I like it when he's successful, and the hard work, comes to culmination. You kind of see something occur, and I will say too, I think from a mental performance perspective, I think, doing the work that he's done, I do see a difference in him, and I appreciate the fact that, look, I talked about support earlier and stuff. And I think, what we're doing here does provide that support, and just even in the conversations we have, and how I see him act. I mean, it's not a silver bullet. It doesn't happen overnight, but there's work that gets put in, and you can definitely see the difference. And even just the thought process of trying to understand why things happen and what to do about them. I think I'm proud to see that, because, also then too, knowing that, what we're doing here really does have impact, even in my own household. So.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that journey in particular is interesting to reflect on, because I've gone from a role with him of being his head team coach to being his mental performance coach, and with you from being the coach that maybe we would interact on the sideline a little bit or through play metrics. You were a good sport parent, as far as the coaching experience goes. But we did have a conversation, like a very productive and polite but directed conversation after his first year U13 with me, kind of leading into tryouts, because it's tryout season right now. So anytime you're going into that, there's a little bit of that uncertainty. He had started the season with me, not playing very much. Like his role on the team in the fall of that first year was not huge. I remember specifically the game in the spring in Kansas City where it clicked for me that I was probably using him wrong and how high his ceiling was. And it was when his arm was broken. And that's, I don't know, just something unleashed in him. And that weekend in Kansas City was unbelievable. And I think he started for me probably every game from that point, just about every game. Those are cool moments, but in that fall season when I'm new, when the ECNL thing is new, the clubs had merged and that was new. He was dealing with so much. What were the conversations like on your guys' end of stick with it, man? Like keep working, keep showing him, because he did find the other side of it. But how was he dealing with that lack of playing time on the back end?
Yeah, well, I think he believed in himself, right? He believed that he should be out there. He believed that he can provide value. I mean, I think there were obviously times where he was doing that, and so I think he just kept pushing. And sports have taught me along the way is, a lot of it gets back to hard work, right? I mean, you put the work in, you want to be successful, and so putting yourself in a position to take advantage of opportunity and be successful when it presents itself, right, is what really is kind of the biggest thing in sports and what translates to life. And so I think, our conversations were, look, keep putting in the work, make sure you're on time, make sure you got the right attitude, make sure you're confident in yourself. And when it's your time, it'll be your time and you'll show, right? And you'll show well. And at the same time too, is be a good teammate and keep pushing. And look, everybody grows at different points along the way here. And, things change year to year and you love the sport. Let's keep having fun, but let's keep pushing. And and you'll be successful, right? And so I think he's gotten there, and obviously there's a lot to do, but to your point, when he got his time, he made the most of it, and proved that he could add the value that needed to be and be that good teammate. So
Yeah, absolutely. And when his moment came, it was in a position that he had not played, at least for me, and probably had not in 11v11 ever played up to that point. So I think there's a huge lesson in that. And I hope even for him, I hope it's one that he holds on to, because he's young, he's going into high school. There's going to be more ups and downs, but the more evidence that he builds for himself that, yes, I've come through this before. Yes, I have the ability and I've shown it and all that. Those things are huge, man. And it was good having those conversations with you. It kind of led into our earliest conversations about kind of your vision for what we were doing here. I'm curious to know, like, when did you first start thinking of mental performance as one of those huge pillars of athletic development, whether for your son or just in general? Like, was there something specific that sparked your interest in this?
yeah, I mean, I'd say probably over the last 5 or so years. I mean, I think there's been a lot more in the media about mental performance, and not the mental health side. Obviously, there's been a lot about that, but mental performance as well. You think about like Novak Djokovic, Brady, Tiger, Rory, a bunch of different athletes talking about how important the mental side of their training is, and being very diligent about engaging in that training. And they might still get upset, they might break rackets, they might do certain things, but they keep coming back to, okay, now it's time to move forward again, right? And just the right mentality to put them in a position to be successful. And you see shows like Full Swing, which is golf, and where they talk about players that have a ton of ability and are really struggling and potentially possibly quitting the game, and then you have somebody that comes in from a mental perspective to help them shape kind of the way that they go about playing their sport, or deploying their ability. And it's just like it's a total differentiator, right? And then you get Breakpoint, which is tennis. You see Michigan football national championship, there's a sports psychologist on the sideline, and he's got both of his hands up on the quarterback's shoulder pads, having a conversation with him about the way forward. And I just looked at those things and thought, man, I really wish I would have had those when I was a kid. And because I had a lot of ability, but there were some times where it was just like looking back thinking, yeah, if I could have figured out how to harness some of that in a better way, I could have been much more successful and probably enjoyed my sport more, and probably been a better teammate as well. So
Yeah, man, we hear that a lot. Obviously, we get to talk to a lot of former athletes, high level athletes, coaches, parents, and this narrative is something that we hear a lot. Had I had, Greg Harden, shout out Greg, one of the best in the business over at Michigan. Had I had him at 14 years old, putting his hands on my shoulders, I probably would have straightened out a lot of stuff too. It would have been massive. Um, you think about that, the pieces of your journey, like outside of just the really good cultural narrative that's starting to build for mental performance, where does it resonate for you? Where do you see it? Your experiences, your son's journey. How has this kind of personally impacted you?
Yeah. Well, so I mentioned, a minute ago about my experience as a golfer, and man, I would throw clubs. I mean, I just get so angry, so frustrated, and and I won't get into all the details because I'm at certain points surprised that my parents didn't kind of pull the plug on
Yeah,
some
yeah.
stuff. But anyway, and even getting to carrying that forward when the Iowa State coaches asked me to make a decision between golf and hockey. I was in a spot where I had my golf clubs in my garage for 2 weeks, and I was not playing golf at all,
Mm.
period. Because it got to, I was, it was never good enough. I'd shoot 2 under par, and man, I missed a putt that was an 8-footer that I should have made. And, it's just a terrible situation. And I just didn't like the sport anymore. And I was done with it. And, had I had somebody, to help me kind of, again, harness that and help me forward, I thought would have been really helpful. And then, my son, then along the way, he's growing into a good athlete. And like I said earlier, wanting to support him in any way that I could. And, that combined with, the car rides and the frustrations. And then it kind of culminated in, we were playing golf, which is not my son's main sport and doesn't play it that often. And just the expectation of, how well he thought he should be playing. And he threw a golf club. And I thought, well, what was that? Like, how
Yeah.
could you possibly think that this is worth throwing a golf club? And I'm like, and it ain't happening. But then at the same time, I sat there in the golf cart and I thought, I mean, man, when I was a kid, yeah, I was really angry and I threw golf clubs and, I just, it really made me think about, okay, there's just, he's a good athlete. He's doing this. I've seen, like we talked about the car rides, the frustrations, possibly looking at things where, man, the goal was wide open and I missed a wide open shot. Well, the reality is there was a player here, there was somebody over here, and it was not a point blank shot. And, how can it's hard for me to just explain that to him. And, again, I was an athlete, but I'm his dad, and, it's kind of hard. Right. And so, which I'm sure everybody can relate to, but it gets back to, okay, so what can I do to support, the mental side of this game? Because again, that's stuff that I would have wanted. That's maybe something I can do. So I, really thought that, we should get started in that area, right, and develop something that could help support that, a better mentality for success in sports, and then obviously, for the rest of his life. So
That's great, man. And I think I mean, I imagine that's around the time that we started talking about this stuff for the first time. So let's get into it. Let's talk about ACG Mental Performance. How did your vision for this company come to life? Why did you feel like it was so critical to build this?
So, coming out of that club throwing incident and just, relating to my experience in sports, I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna find somewhere that, that he can speak with a sports psychologist, mental performance, a certified coach. And I looked around in our area in central Iowa, couldn't find anybody, talked to my doctor friends and said, hey, do we know of any sports psychologists in the area that can help, meet with my son and kind of start to walk through a program. Couldn't find anything locally, looked nationally, found some individual type programs, but kind of hard to understand what you were even signing up for and kind of how it would work. And, my background, from an entrepreneur perspective, I kind of felt like I knew what I thought this could be. Right. And so I couldn't find that good solution. So I felt like, look, maybe I'll build it. Ended up having some time to be able to do that. So was really thinking hard about that and kind of plotting for the course of what this was going to be. And, for me, it was really, there was a handful of things that I wanted to be transparent in what you were signing up for. So you knew what you were going to get, right? In terms of, look, it's going to be 60 minutes. You're going to get this, every other week. It's going to be online. You're going to know what you're getting. Certified coaches. So you've got somebody that, is certified, obviously the meeting with your kids, and want to make sure it's the right individual or people, and they're certified to do that. And then also too, they needed to have some experience actually in sports, and potentially the sport that the person's playing or the athlete's playing, or something similar, just to be able to relate and, build that rapport really well. Easy to use. So it needs to be easy to schedule. I mean, obviously all of our parents, myself included, are really busy with a bunch of other stuff, let alone all the sports that we're trying to do for our kids, and in multiple sports at that, depending on how many kids you have. And really wanted to make sure that it's something that was built to be impactful, right? That really is going to deliver on what it is that, the original point of, look, we need mental performance coaching for, these athletes, and it needs to make sure that it actually does that. And at the end of the day, I wanted it to be affordable, because if it's not, then, it's just, people aren't going to be able to do it. I didn't want it to necessarily be all elite and all that kind of stuff, but more something that, could be for a lot of athletes out there. So that's kind of what the goal was. And, I and you and I were fortunate to have a conversation one day. I know it was coming out of a tournament that we were at, and there was some intention to have a conversation with the team around, I think the title of the session that you were going to do was, I think sports psychology was the title at the time. I think something along those lines that you'd had. And
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you and I started talking about it post that, and, sharing the idea of, look, this is what, here's what I'm thinking. And I'm, down the line on some certain things, and going to need to be to a point here where I'm going to need to have some help in terms of getting the coaching team together, running that piece, and, kind of, where are you at with stuff, and what are your thoughts? And it turned out with your background, there was a lot of application there. And so it was a very timely conversation. And, oftentimes the stars seem to align when they're supposed to. And this seemed like a great conversation. And so, obviously off we had gone, and with you helping on the coaching side and delivering on all that too. So, it was, and just off we went from there. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, timely for me, obviously my background kind of came to a good point to contribute. I think people are more interested in yours, especially for the sake of this conversation. Tell us about kind of how your experience helped you navigate getting this thing off the ground. It's not been easy necessarily.
Yeah, well, I mean, anything that's easy is probably not worth building, right?
Yeah.
But I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years or so, and was coming out of one project, and so I've had a lot of experience in both small and big type organizations, and building solutions and products and services and those kinds of things. And so, this is a passion area of mine, obviously, with my experience in sports, and my son getting to a certain age and seeing kind of this evolution of mental performance, and it being a piece of the puzzle here for sports. And so, from an entrepreneurial perspective and not being able to find a good solution, I thought, this is something that I actually would enjoy spending time on a daily basis. Right. And so, so that portion just leaned into that, and I could get pretty excited about that. And then, the other part is I'm a focus group here. Right. I mean, it's like, okay, how do I want this to work? Because I want my son to meet with a coach, each week or every other week or however often we deem. And so how do I want to use this literally? And then, does that align with what a lot of other parents are feeling? And so through focus group efforts and, different things, got to a point of, yeah, okay, well, so this seems to basically resonate for what we're trying to achieve here and how we're trying to apply it. And so it's, I constantly, which, get back to, okay, what does my wife think about this? Because she's, she would be somebody who'd be coming to me saying, hey, we should do this for Luca, or, or Valentina, or what have you. And, us looking at things and evaluating solutions for our kids, and then how do we use them? Right. And so to me, it's pretty easy, because I'm like, well, I want to be able to make the appointment this way. Right. And I want to be able to reschedule something this way. And so, I am the target audience. Right. So it's been good to be on that side, to know that I don't have to really go talk to somebody far away, to know that, look, this is how this needs to work. So, anyway, so it's been good. Obviously, we're early on, but yeah, it's been a great experience, a lot of passion behind it, and good team here so far. So.
Yeah, well, and I think that's what makes it such a good story. Like, I think powerful the direction that things are headed, because one, obviously from your business background, you're probably one of the most, if not the most detailed person that I've ever met. And we've spent several hours of our lives together now combing through PowerPoints and Canva presentations and looking for missed commas and apostrophes and that kind of stuff. And so I love that. But I think even more powerful of what you've brought to the table is that word passion. Like, this is not just a service that you dreamed up in your head and are now getting out to the public. This is something that really on a daily basis essentially is affecting your family's life, from your son's performance in soccer to, I'm sure, the things that you're taking away just from some of our conversations and what we're all learning from our coaching team and the materials that we're producing. So I am curious, do you find yourself applying the principles in daily life, parenting approach? Are there things that you find yourself leaning on regularly from the mental performance side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, it seems like this is drifting into my golf game quite a bit. So I don't play golf
Yeah.
as often as I probably want to, but I do find myself to be very low key on the golf course now, and it's almost kind of strange. I still really want to do well, but I'm able to kind of reset pretty quickly, which I think gets back to a lot of what we talk about and what you share and what the team shares in terms of best practices and tools that you take away is getting upset, but being able to get back to your focus and moving forward, because it just doesn't help to just be angry about stuff. So I think there's an element of that. I think certainly in terms of how I handle discussions with my son about success, failure, topics, leaving the game, pre-game, you know, conversations that he and I have. I mean, he talked the other day about how he's feeling like stuff is it's never good enough, right? And I thought back to, man, when I was a kid, that was like exactly the same thing. And obviously, he and I are very similar in a lot of ways. And it's just those are things that I could share my experience, but somebody needs to be able to help. Okay, how do you handle that? How do you harness that? Not tamp anything down, but how do you harness that nothing's ever good enough kind of thing? I talked about shooting 2 under on the golf course and missing a 6 foot or 8 foot putt to be 3 under and being it's not good enough kind of thing, right? And so you have to have that drive, but it's just about helping athletes understand how you best apply those, right? And so in that situation, it's like, look, let's make sure we get that on the list of stuff to talk about this week or next week when you're meeting with DJ or the coach that you're meeting with, and and talk about that, because those are the exact things that when I was a kid, I wish I would have had somebody that would have helped me be able to work through that, because I don't necessarily have probably the answer, but and not that a coach has the answer, but at least the ability to help him think through okay, here's how this is maybe typically handled, and here's how he applies it on a basis that helps him be more successful, right? So I think kind of how we handle those conversations and where I might point him is something that I certainly employ. So
Yeah, I think that's great, man. I think that's great. I find myself kind of doing the same thing. Not in parenting so much yet. Although me and Asher will play basketball in the driveway, and I refuse to let him win. So sometimes that will boil over into into some contention, and he's raging about losing. I'm like twice your height. I don't know what we're so upset about. So we'll do some emotional regulation there. I try not to be his mental performance coach, but it is helpful, man. It comes up. Like, this is not just stuff within sports. I think this is stuff within day-to-day life.
yeah,
And
and I mean, you understand how to handle these things, right? But just being a parent and an athlete, I mean, it's a different dynamic than being a coach and an athlete, right? And I think it speaks to the value that is delivered here when it's not the parent that's delivering the guidance, right? And it also talks, it also speaks to the level of engagement that occurs when it's an athlete and a coach, as opposed to, again, a parent and an athlete. So I think that's just part of the value that's delivered here, right? So
100%, man. So they need to hear it from another source sometimes. It's just that's the fact of the matter. Parenting, yeah, I think that's an interesting angle to consider quickly. Like, you sit on a lot of parent sidelines, well versed in the athlete parent community, and so In terms of what we're doing, what do you think parents aren't getting? What are some of the misunderstandings around mental performance as a fairly new thing? What would you want to clarify for any athlete parents listening?
Yeah. I think the biggest things I probably think about in answering that question are mental health, right, and how it differs. I mean, mental health, obviously, there are clinical solutions that need to be applied and worked through. This is more of a, providing guidance in terms of how to optimize mindset as opposed to kind of treating, a challenge. And so, it's mental performance, not mental health. And so it's about optimization and like we talked earlier about the it's never good enough or having a lot of fire when you're out there on the field. That's not bad. It's not bad at all. I mean, it's just about how you funnel that in the right way, right? I mean, I was wound up as could be on the ice as well. But I mean, that's part of it, right? That's part of what makes sports great, right? And exciting and engaging is making sure that you harness some of those and put some of those pieces of excitement in the right fashion. But it's also too, I think another thing is this isn't, participation trophies. I mean, this is, we've talked about success and taking advantage of opportunities and being successful. And so, we're not talking about participation trophies here. We're talking about winning and being successful and helping provide the framework for tools that help somebody be successful near and long term in their life. Right. And then I think too, it's, like anything in life, there's no, it's not a silver bullet, right? It's whether you're lifting weights or, working on your technical skills, it takes time and it takes effort. And, but doing that, can provide payoff, right? And so, it's work and it takes time just like anything else. So I think those are probably the three biggest pieces that I would see in terms of kind of helping shape, what this looks like from a parent's perspective. So.
That's great, man. We had a conversation with a parent about that very thing, about kind of how we are looking to optimize and to improve performance. I mean, we're competitive people, and we understand the complexities of performance. And one of the examples I hit them with is like, I work directly with NFL players. NFL players are crazy. I mean, they're just a whole different breed of what goes through their head to get them to the levels of drive that they have to be in the top 0.1% of athletes in the world. It's unbelievable what they do. Their time is valuable. They're busy. And if they didn't believe that this kind of coaching would make them play better on the field and, essentially guarantee them a longer career and hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's not time they would spend. And yet they are doing it, and they have been doing it. And it's because they know it makes them better. They're more competitive. They're enjoying their sport more. They're more motivated. It's just, yeah, there's no fluff here. I think that's really good for people to hear. It's like, it's athlete centered in the sense that we're tailoring it to what they need and what they can do, but it's for them to be better at their sport and to play their sport longer by hopefully enjoying it more and playing it at a higher level. So that's great, man. As we wrap up, take a moment just to kind of to look back, look ahead, think about this whole journey that you've been on. If you could almost be your own mental performance coach, or at least step into the time capsule and give yourself some advice as a younger version of Mike Anderson, either as an athlete or a new parent in sports, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, I think, again, it's much of what we've talked about here. Like, this has to be a portion of training. I mean, I think, we're kind of new into this. I mean, in terms of, we've been up for so long, but I mean, the athletes that have gone through here, the teams that have gone through and continue to go through, it's awesome to see the impact that this can have. And it's definitely it needs to be a piece of the training puzzle that people just look at as, look, this is something that I do along with weight training and the other aspects that go into to being a successful athlete nowadays. So it's just understanding that there's a lot of frustration that's there when you're a kid and you're growing up and you obviously are going through a lot, but this is just something that you need to make sure you're spending time on. So, and that resonates with my son when as we've come to start into this in terms of the value of it. So.
Yeah, good. Yeah, he's great to work with, man, and it's gratifying to see it pay off for him in the long term. Looking forward, then, what gets you excited about what ACG is doing? How do you see its role evolving in the youth athletic space?
Yeah, like I said, we've been up and we've been running, and some of the feedback that we've gotten from, I mean, actually, I should say it's pretty phenomenal in terms of the feedback we've gotten. There's just some things that even, give me goosebumps in terms of, some parents coming back and saying that the level of impact that this has had on their kid and their athlete, in their sport, in their situation as a person. I mean, it's awesome. And I think, every day we hear more and more and more, and it's like, and the concept that we're bringing here to the table is really working, and it's really having, that impact that I talked about earlier. And so I'm really excited about, continuing to build awareness and making sure that people understand that this kind of solution is out there. And, once people get going, just the value that they see and the success that it brings, I'm really proud of it and really excited about what the future holds for us, and the business, and, and the athletes that we're working with, and the teams and the organizations. And, sports are awesome, and, we're making them better. Right. And so it's a great thing. We've got a great team here, and, we all love sports and we love being better at them, and we want to make sure that we're having that impact out there. And so I'm just really excited about what the future holds for the company, as it relates
Absolutely,
to
man.
impacting
Absolutely.
So
Give us a sound bite, one message, one takeaway that you want athletes or parents listening to walk away with today.
Mental performance has to be a core part of your athlete's training. I mean, we've got a platform here that's straightforward and, available and impactful, and we really look forward to you joining us.